what you're seeing is the future of mining, moving to the edge of the grid, moving to alternative revenue streams. And that's the story we have to tell. The next panel is going to talk about how we tell that story in the EU. It's called The Future of Mining in the EU. And our moderator is someone very dear to me, a fellow at BPI, Bitcoin Policy Institute with me, Margot Paez, who's a PhD candidate at the Georgia Institute of Technology. Margot is a rock star, and anything that we do together, Margot is the brains of the operation. Next, we have Susie Violet Ward, co-founder, Bitcoin Policy UK, a journalist with Forbes magazine. Maybe you've read some of Susie's work. It's a bright part of my day whenever it happens. It's so encouraging to have quality journalism telling these stories. Daniel Jonsson, co-founder and CEO of Greenblocks. You'll hear more of the story, but Daniel is mining Bitcoin on geothermal energy in Iceland and balancing grids there. Next is Harald Rauter. Harald was a breath of fresh air for me. Harald has a decade of experience in climate science, climate policies, strategic venturing. He's also a PhD, like me. It's nice to find fellow PhDs. And his thesis is that Bitcoin is the X factor to achieving 1.5 degrees global warming target. And finally, Kristian Kläger, founder and CEO of TeraHash Energy. Chris just recently spoke in the Bundestag. He's also CEO managing partner of the Kläger Group, a 75-year-old family business in Bavaria. And he has an amazing vision for Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining in Germany. All right, thank you. Enjoy the panel.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Troy said, I'm Margot, and we have an amazing panel, and I'm sure you've heard that on other panels. You've heard the moderator say this is an amazing group, but trust me, this truly is an amazing group of people. So I want to just get right into it. We have 50 minutes, and hopefully we'll start from the broader context and then get a little bit more into the details, the challenges. So first of all, I really want to contextualize mining in the UK and in Europe, because it's not just Bitcoin mining, that's one part of the equation, but the other part of the equation is energy. And energy in the UK and in Europe is different from the way we understand it in the US. So I would really love to hear from each of you to give a little bit of a context of the energy situation where you're located in the European Union and in the UK, and some of the challenges that your respective countries are facing. So, we'll just go around. We have plenty of time. So, Susie, you want to start us off? Tell us about what's going on in the UK.
The UK and the EU are very different, and I think energy prices have got back to normal-ish in the EU, would you say? But definitely not in the UK. In winter, we have to be really careful about when we put our heating on.
Susie, could I ask you to speak up just a little bit more for our audience?
I hardly ever get told to speak up.
That is perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. So the UK and the EU are very different, and many people can't actually afford to put their heating on in the UK at the moment because the price of energy has gone through the roof. And it's crazy because we actually have a really big supply in the North Sea, and for some reason we just can't get our act together. And I don't think even our politicians understand why our energy prices are so high. It's just a really complex pricing structure. So I think until we actually fix those issues and grid policy, how we structure pricing, Bitcoin mining isn't going to be viable in the UK. But that doesn't mean that we can't make it happen. It just means that we have to identify what the issues are so we can go ahead and fix them.
Great. Right, let's hear from you. Let's hear. What's going on where you're at?
Right. Thanks, Margot. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Iceland is in a pretty interesting situation at the moment. We are an energy-rich country. We have an abundance of natural resources that we have chosen to monetize. A few decades ago, we started heavily lobbying to get aluminium smelters and such as we decided to export energy. And then today, the official stance is we're in an energy shortage. We are being curtailed today. We mine Bitcoin in Iceland. We buy curtailable energy, and we are being curtailed. But also, some of these aluminium smelters are being curtailed. And yeah, there are odd things happening. But mainly, the reason for this is the power producers in Iceland. So about 90% of the energy in Iceland is owned by the state. It's publicly owned companies. The biggest one representing about 70% of energy production, and they haven't been allowed basically to build any new power plants in many years, as they get heavy opposition from environmentalist groups, causing the situation we found ourselves in now. With the energy transition, we're trying to get more. We're trying to use the official stance is obviously we're trying to move away from fossil fuels, right? So we're buying more EV vehicles and so on and so on. And all of a sudden, yeah, we're in an odd predicament with regards to power. There's lots of talk. I think in big part it's just political, it's politicized, and unfortunately, our industry is getting thrown under the bus a little bit in that context. But in a very broad scope, that's the very current situation right now in Iceland.
Right, yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of those themes play out in a number of locations. Harald, please.
Well, thank you. I mean, as I'm based in Switzerland, and Switzerland is not part of the EU, and we have a very different energy structure, power system structure, so I will not talk to the Swiss situation, but to the European situation. And I think you could ring fence that by saying that Europe is in a structurally very vulnerable position. And that is driven by mostly poor political decision-making in the past. We are a bit of a boiling frog that has incrementally compounded bad structural political decisions. Just to give you a few examples, one of which has hit us badly, I say us as the European Union, has hit us badly upon the Russian invasion of Ukraine, is our strong dependence on Russian natural gas, which was very convenient in the past because it provided the industrial base with cheap power and abundant power. But of course, it completely neglected the counterparty risks that has also entailed. Secondly, I think, and I speak here as an environmentalist who is obviously very climate conscious, and I think that decarbonization is a very good thing, but it matters how you do things. And to give you an example, the way the European policymakers have rolled out draconian environmentalism policies very much top-down at the speed that did not give the economy and the people enough time to adapt. And that was also a theme that I've heard in the previous two panels, and I tee it up for you, Chris, because you will speak out of experience, I guess. And it's like throwing someone, a human being into the water and say, well, now start to breathe underwater. These things take time to adapt. And I think the third element that I think is hitting us very hard, and I don't think this is a European thing alone, is that there is very, very perverse incentive structures in the power markets itself. Nobody wants to bear the costs for the infrastructure developments that have to be done. there is this famous saying, there is no transition in the sense of decarbonization transition without transmission. But who is paying for these infrastructures? And nobody wants to pay it. Yeah? And so the hot potato is sort of circled around, and nobody's able to take those decisions. Now we find ourselves in a very, very, I think, dangerous predicament, because it's also not clear who will take the responsibility for these decisions onwards. Is it the nation states that hold a lot of power in the European Union? Is it the European Parliament? And I think this creates a predicament which is detrimental for us as a society going forward, because, as we all know, without energy, there is no prosperity. And I think this makes me hopeful for the conversations that we're having here, because Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin as an instrument and as a technology redistributes some sort of agency, even if we brute force at the moment what we have to do to solve our problems. But it makes me hopeful that we now have a technology that allows us to actually do something ourselves. And Chris is one of these great examples, and all of these people that do this amazing work. And I think what we need to do going forward is to contextualize this work better, and hopefully find a way of how we can resolve this, to me, quite concerning situation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Harald. Hi, guys, from my side. I'm Chris. I'm from Germany, Bavaria. Some of you may have been to the Oktoberfest at some point. And before I start, Margot, you said we have enough time. I want to thank Troy. Troy, where are you? Like, what you did, like, no, really, what you did, putting up these panels with these people, not only this panel, but also what you told me yesterday when we had breakfast together, what you did for Madeira, Free Madeira and the conference, that is unique, that is amazing, and a huge, big round of applause, please, again for Troy. Yeah. I guess for me it's important to show you where I'm at, where I'm coming from. I run and operate a family-owned business founded by my grandfather 75 years ago. So we celebrate our 75-year anniversary this year. It's our philosophy to produce products within Germany, and that should stay the way for many decades to come. And we need energy for that. We produce plastic components, spraying systems, spraying technology, but also technical components for the automobile industry. And we need energy to produce these parts. So my business initially had nothing to do with Bitcoin and nothing to do with Bitcoin mining. And as Michael Saylor put it yesterday in his awesome presentation and keynote, he said, we have to onboard 330 million operating companies. I am one of them. I am one of the first companies within Germany who set up a strategic and implemented a strategic Bitcoin strategy. We put Bitcoin on our balance, and because we are a company that uses and needs a lot of energy, lots of megawatts for our production processes, and we also need heat. We've heard that in the previous panels. We also need heat for our production, not only in the winter time. We need heat the whole year for our production processes. And how do we get the heat at the moment? Fossil fuels, obviously. And in Germany, we also have this Vision 2040 to get carbon neutral and green heat. So these are the challenges I face, and Bitcoin was a solution. Was a solution for these challenges. For me, and what we did, we incorporated Bitcoin mining into our production processes, and I guess that's something we will all talk about in detail in the upcoming minutes. Show these technologies, show my energy lab to politicians, to decision makers, and that is, I think, very important to build trust, because Bitcoin mining is the only part besides Lightning and Bitcoin on balance and so on, that is physical. You can touch it. And when you show the people, the decision makers, the politicians, it's not loud, it doesn't need to be dirty, it's a classic server. It's a server tower, and you can use it like a black box, put kilowatt in, and you get value and heat out. That is amazing, and I guess that's why we're sitting here.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Thank you, you guys. I think you've set the tone for the rest of this panel discussion. So, I'm hearing there's a lot of challenges at different levels. We're talking about scarcity, access to energy, top-down approaches that are failing. Truly, what is truly decarbonization and how do we get there? And also what I'm hearing is that the solution, or at least part of the solution, is Bitcoin mining. And we're all here at a Bitcoin conference, so we probably want to hear a little bit more about that. So, all right, so if Bitcoin mining is the solution, how does that work in this context? How do we fit Bitcoin mining into this picture to solve these problems? In what ways is it solving these problems? And is it unique in any way to your particular jurisdiction where you're located? So I just want to open this up, let anyone who wants to answer get into the discussion. Feel free to comment on each other. Let's just have a real fruitful, real dynamic conversation about this.
So we have a really strong reliance on fossil fuels in the UK, and we know that we have to get away from them. I can't get it. I don't know what to do, Margot. I'm sorry.
You're doing great.
Usually I speak really loudly. I don't know what's wrong. So we have a really, we really do rely on fossil fuels, and we know that Bitcoin mining will help build out renewables. We know that renewable energy sources like wind and solar are intermittent, and we know that we have to balance the grid, and we know that energy isn't always, the supply side isn't always consistent, and we know that Bitcoin mining fits into this just beautifully to solve all of these renewable issues that we have. The problem is, from the way I see it, is education. Every time I talk about Bitcoin with anybody who is not in this space, they just shut down. And there seems to be a really irrational hatred of Bitcoin, despite the supply, the demand, the fact it will build out renewables, it will give additional revenue streams that can help make businesses viable. The list is endless as to the possibilities that Bitcoin mining can present, but we are fighting we're fighting proof of work in the EU. They want to ban proof of work. It's absolutely insane. They don't understand that energy has to be connected to money, and they don't put the right emphasis on what energy should be used for, because a lot of people don't understand or value Bitcoin. And if they did, and they understood it, so there has to be more education, and we have to find a way to reach people, but the right people in the right way. I don't have the answer to that. I can't even talk about it at family dues.
That's rough. How about from the gentleman over here?
Well, how does it fit in? I would argue from two perspectives. One is a market-driven perspective, and one is a policy-driven perspective. And the market-driven perspective is Bitcoin miners are the best market arbitragers of the energy markets that there is. And the more inefficient the market is, the more there is to arbitrage. And I can guarantee you one thing, the European power markets are incredibly inefficient and incredibly centrally planned, and we know how well this works. So there is a bottom-up incentive to learn how to profit from these market inefficiencies. And we're seeing this across the board, and we have heard from a lot of great examples already. And the second one is, how does this fit in? And that ties sort of to what Susie was saying. There is, ironically, a lot of European legislation which has sort of Bitcoin mining written all above it, but it doesn't mention it explicitly. So I'm giving you an example. There are legislations in place which are rolled out. They are now sitting in national parliaments and have to be sort of responded to, that almost brute force the European power markets into demand response solutions, and how the national governments aim to respond to that. Well, what's the best demand response solution? Well, in this case, there's a first best, which is Bitcoin mining, and there are other bests as well, like AI and others. So we need to tell these stories of how that fits in. There are energy efficiency legislations out there which force data centers and computer operators into heat reuse, which usually poses a large problem to them because they're not used to reusing their heat. Bitcoin miners are these incubators that start to bring those solutions to the market, and there is now a sort of a policy corridor that opens this opportunity as a gigantic market to cover. It will take years for this to play out, but I think this is where we see an interplay between centralized planned top-down policy, which ironically still opens up these golden pockets where Bitcoin mining fits in, and the engineers bottom-up that start to provide the solutions. What is missing is this meso level in the middle, which translates both the policies as well as explains the solution so that this can actually be adopted rapidly and at scale.
May I add something, Harald, to this great take, as always? You mentioned demand response. Like, in my experience, I think what I see when I talk to members of parliament, German Bundestag, or on a regional level to mayors, to build trust, we know all these arguments why Bitcoin mining is great. And you can go very deep into those technical details and heat levels and milliseconds, whatever demand response. But that, in my experience, that is not what matters most. What matters most is because you talk to people and you have to build trust. You have to build trust, and that is what I experience when I talk to people. They say, like, okay, this entrepreneur, family, business, conservative, when he is doing it, maybe there's something onto it. Maybe we should look into it. That's not the typical speculative criminal doing these type of things, first of all. And secondly, use the language they know. Some people, when I started my startup 1 year ago, where we advocate and consult on Bitcoin energy, infrastructure, and turnkey solutions, I did not mention the term mining. I said data center solution, HPC, and so on and so on. And people laughed at me in the beginning. But now they understand why that can be important. And maybe we get to a point that I would love to see that when you can speak out in the public, not only here on Bitcoin Atlantis, that it's Bitcoin mining and it's great. And what I experienced at Bitcoin in Bundestag, in the German parliament, the members of parliament or the employees, they are curious. They want to come, they want to find out things, and then they get into this room and, like, sitting in the last row, like hiding themselves, and they ask questions afterwards, so they do not feel comfortable yet. Or you have those politicians interested, and they're like, okay, me as an individual, I find it fascinating, Bitcoin mining, but my political party, that is something else. That is a different story. So maybe I cannot come to visit this meeting or this conference keynote, but I will watch it afterwards, definitely. So, but that is sad. That is sad. So use the language to build trust, and because Bitcoin mining, you can touch it, you can feel it, show them, invite them with open arms. I guess that is very important.
Great.
Yeah, some great points made there, and I fully agree. And it's a shame. It's a shame to hear what Kristian is saying about us kind of having to hide. My background is in tech. I worked in the data center industry. Yeah, thank you. Bitcoin mining has a lot of great use cases, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing for energy and energy production, energy transmission. Bitcoin fixes a lot of things. So it sucks that we have to sometimes hide, and you can see it if you look at the websites of a lot of companies that you know are mining Bitcoin, and they say, oh, we do high performance computing, and you know for a fact they do absolutely no high performance computing, they mine Bitcoin, which, yeah, in effect is high performance computing, but you get what I mean. And another thing that you mentioned, Kristian, there is we have to build this trust, and it's a hard conversation to get into. It has definitely been my experience throughout the years. I've been talking about this for a few years now. My belief in what Bitcoin can do is very big, and I think we're gonna get there, and I think we're starting to get more listeners on the other side. But you talk to someone, and as soon as you mention Bitcoin, exactly as Susie said, they kind of just shut down. So yeah, we have to build that trust. We have to have all the conversations, and we have to have the conversations with the right people. It's my experience that when you talk to the people on the ground, when you talk to the people that are actually producing power, for example, and you start talking about what Bitcoin can do, and the solutions that we can provide, and how dynamic and mobile our industry is, they go, oh, hang on, this sounds too good to be true, what you're telling me. So it's very often when you sit down with an electrical engineer who works at a power plant or power producer, you can kind of see the light go on in their eyes. They're like, okay. But I think the issue we are all facing in all of this narrative is that the best way to kind of describe this sentiment to me is there's this saying that the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was convince the world he doesn't exist, right? So this describes the sentiment so well to me, how I feel about like the greatest trick that the opponents of Bitcoin ever pulled was convince the world that Bitcoin is terrible for the world. And that's what we constantly get hit by. People just think, oh, but I heard it's used for drugs, it's used for money, like these bad things, and all of the misconceptions are what we are truly having to try to fight to unleash the true potential of Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I think, I'm from the US, I'm not from Europe or the UK, but I can definitely say that this is universal. We're all struggling with this challenge of trying to get the right narrative out there, trying to convince people that Bitcoin mining isn't what you hear in the news. It's not melting the planet. It's not going to push us past 2 degrees of warming. It's not wasteful. If anything, it makes use of wasted energy. And so these are very difficult narratives. But I know that a number of you have now formed associations to try to tackle this challenge. Susie, you're part of a policy group in the UK. Harald, Chris, you're also both part of an Bitcoin Energy Association. Daniel, I'm sure that in your work, you've also have tried to work with policymakers and other stakeholders. So what are each of you doing right now to try to tackle these challenges? Because I think this is the biggest challenge for all of us. And you've all have mentioned, we'll call it a high-performance computing center. Oh, we'll say we're integrating with AI. Oh, we're highly flexible loads, or, whatever, load centers. We're also afraid to say Bitcoin because it now has this toxic image, even within the energy industry. Even if a renewable energy site is using Bitcoin, they're afraid to say it. So what are you doing? Because you have formed these associations, so it seems to me that you're really trying to change that narrative. So let's get into that. Let's hear more about how we can solve this particular problem so that we can really get Bitcoin integrated in solving these issues, these bigger issues. So Harald, I see you nodding, so I'm going to throw it to you, see what happens when you engage.
Well, thanks for teeing it up. So I can use or hijack this panel for a minute to make a bit of an advertisement. We've recently formed the European Bitcoin and Energy Association, and we have chosen this this name very deliberately to emphasize the interconnection and the intricate relationship between Bitcoin and energy, because it's such a pain point for us as a society, ensuring prosperity going forward. And what we're trying to do is to learn as we go, to be very honest with you, but to build sort of a platform where people who are interested, doing interesting work, solving problems on the ground, can come to us, and we can collect all these data, all these facts, all this brilliant knowledge that is there, and channel it to those people where it matters. And where does it matter? In the real world, politicians and legacy institutions. Now we can talk about it, how this will look like going forward, but at the moment, decision makers are sitting in parliaments, are sitting in governments, and these are the people we need to talk to. And IBEA is trying to do exactly that. And I think one thing that we should not forget, it's not 2015 anymore. We're in 2024. We talk about the 9th largest asset class in the world. It's a
Did we flip silver?
All right. Haven't checked. It's a massive thing, and it's here to stay. We should be proud of the work that we're doing because we're solving real-world problems. And this story needs to be told. And the second thing that I would like to emphasize is, first and foremost, we're talking to human beings. The good news is we have spies and sleeper cells in every legacy organization. And they, as Chris said, they are still hiding. They're not daring. They're like us school kids, you know, like who didn't want to show up. But they are there. And they need to know that we see them. And behind closed doors and in private conversations, they are very open and curious. And we should nurture that knowledge. We should provide them with the knowledge that they need, with the arguments that they need to spread the word within their organizations. Because I can guarantee you one thing, we as outsiders will never have the intimacy, the relationships, the trust that those people have within their respective organizations. So there's a massive multiplier opportunity there that will drive adoption in a very, very different way. And IBEA is trying to do exactly that. So from a European perspective, we are trying to respond to legislation, try to understand it, try to contextualize it, so that we can actually work out what this all means. Some of this legislation is complete nonsense. It provides barriers that cannot even be responded to because it's technically not possible. But this is, you know, we know this is legislation. It makes, sometimes it doesn't make sense. But at least we need to know what can we respond to, how can we respond to it. And then we need to collect the data to firm up our arguments and start to build a conversation top down, bottom up, so that we can ultimately get collectively to better solutions.
I would like to add a few things you said, Harald. First of all, and you also mentioned convincing and so on, influencing, and that is at least not my philosophy. When you talk to people or you want to orange pill people, it's more like you see it in their eyes if there's a spark, if they're curious, and that accounts for politicians as well. You see if they think it's for criminals and speculative and bad for the environment, or do they really see it as a technology, as an innovation, disruptive innovation, and we need to be open-minded for new innovation coming in. So I always try to see if this accounts for these people, and then it is very important to be the change you want to see for the world, you know, and everyone and everybody can do that on their own in their company, and it doesn't really matter if they're the CEO or the owner like I am in my company, or if they're an employee talking to their managers. In a normal way, not in a toxic way, like really just saying, okay, Bitcoin energy, that is technology. And for politicians, my experience is, if you talk about technology and innovation, they don't fear that it is money, it is a new monetary system, because that is something totally different. Long term, obviously, we all know that this is also a big opportunity. But now, right now, the technology is here. We can use it. We can use it right now to solve those problems we are facing in Europe. Not in 5 years, not in 10 years. We can use it right now. Let's do the proof of work in Germany and in Europe. And this is very important that more and more politicians see it like that.
Yeah. Having the right conversations definitely matters. As you mentioned, you can see who's open to this idea and you can see who's closed off to it. And it's such an annoying part of all the conversations that we have when we start talking about energy. If you were talking to someone who says, well, Bitcoin mining should be banned, it's bad for the environment. If the person really believes that Bitcoin has no value, it's pretty much a dead conversation. Like you need to establish that the thing has value in order for it to have some right to buy electricity and so on. So having the right conversation, that definitely matters. And I have a stance on this as well. Like Harald mentioned the sleeper cells. They are everywhere, for sure. We have our spies. And yeah, a lot of people are in a position where they can't really, and Michael Saylor mentioned this in his speech yesterday as well. You have a lot of people out there, powerful people, CEOs and so on, and they have to have a public stance, and then they have to have a private stance. And it's gonna take time for the private stance to become public. But it's happening, and I think that's one of the things that's very important to keep in mind is that time is on our side. You cannot stop Bitcoin. It's happening with or without you. And more people, we're talking about people in positions of power, we're talking about people in parliament, and there's a generational change, right? We all know you're a perfect example of this, and we see this all the time in Iceland. We meet people all the time that are the next generation that is taking over something and they want to get involved with it. Like people who own small hydro power plants somewhere, family business, and the son brings his dad to a meeting going, can we mine Bitcoin with this? You know, so we can't ignore the generational shift that is happening. So that's one thing that's great. And I think that the biggest thing all of us need to really keep in mind, because this is an uphill struggle, and a lot of us have been in it for years and years, is use Bitcoin to do good. It's super important. Be a net benefit to your societies. Be a net benefit to your world. Don't extract from the world, but add to it. And I think it's so important to keep this in mind. And I just want to add one brief thing on the back of that, just a real life story. So we're all talking about this, and because there are massive ways we can add to the world. We can unlock stranded energy, which means unlocking finance to further grow renewable energy and so on and so on. I came here from the Middle East. I spent some time in February in the Middle East, had some great, very interesting conversations. Lots happening there, for example. But I had some annoying conversations as well. And so I spoke to some people who were telling me, oh, we can get very cheap power. We can get very cheap power. And I'm like, okay, that's abnormally cheap. How do you get this power? Oh, we do it in farms because the energy is subsidized by the state. And this is a terrible example, because energy is being subsidized for one thing, and you're taking it and you're using it for another thing. Energy is being subsidized for farming, and you're going to use it to mine Bitcoin. Why? Because you want to make money. Don't engage in this type of bullshit. It hurts us. It hurts us, and it hurts our industry, and it hurts these conversations. It hinders our growth. So yeah.
Yep. So you said it's going to happen with or without people, and that's why we founded the Bitcoin Policy UK, is because Bitcoin will do its thing. You know, it will happen regardless, but I just don't want the UK to fall behind, which is why we put so much effort in, because I don't think they understand that Bitcoin will continue with or without them. So how do you actually counter the FUD? Well, we've got a couple of ways. We've actually picked out all of our politicians and put them on a little chart as to how orange pillable they are. And how, you know, whether or not they're susceptible to it or not, or neutral. And so then we're going to go and target those that are, but they don't listen. Even then they don't listen. They have to see what the incentives are for them. So they have to really understand it. And it goes back to that educational aspect that we talk about all the time. So I live and breathe writing about this stuff. And the great thing about writing for Forbes is I'm not speaking to Bitcoiners. I'm speaking to non-Bitcoiners, which is why I don't really spend that much time on Twitter, because I feel like I'm just preaching to the converted there. But when I write about Bitcoin mining, and I've interviewed you about Bitcoin mining, and I've got to get all of you guys into some sort of article, but I'm able to actually speak to people who all they've heard is the FUD. And then when it comes to writing about Bitcoin, the amount of effort that you have to put in to understand it, you can't expect a BBC journalist to just go off and write a piece that's well informed. It takes hundreds, if not thousands of hours to get your head around it. And then you've got to write it in a really simple way that people who aren't into Bitcoin understand. So I would say that trying to find the right politicians to target is one way, but writing factually, and your article, Margot, oh my goodness, we can't. So Margot did the most incredible piece. There was a UN Bitcoin mining study that came out, and Margot ripped it apart. She absolutely took every single...
I'm the moderator. I'm not supposed to get any attention.
It was unbelievable, and I think there's only one person on the planet that could have actually done it in the way that Margot did. It was absolutely phenomenal. She just took every single aspect of it and proved why they were talking nonsense. But the problem is, you can't do that with everything. So the amount, and the premise of what Margot was trying to achieve was Brandolini's law and the asymmetry of bullshit, that it takes a lot more energy to counteract the FUDs than it does to actually put it out there in the first place. So we've just got to keep at it.
Can I just say, I think we need to stop talking about spies and sleeper cells. You walk into Susie's office, there's a board with pictures of politicians. And, you know, we're good people, we promise.
Oh, I did use the word target, didn't I? Oh, no, sorry.
Trust me.
Okay, so let me, you kind of threw me off, Susie.
Sorry.
Didn't expect, no, it's fine, it's fine. So what I wanted to tie in here, so we're talking about solving these problems, you know, how to engage with people who are skeptical, but I also think that we have another challenge, which is at what point do Bitcoin mining companies or people in the industry say, this is too much, this is too intrusive in terms of the engagement with policymakers? Because I think that there is a point, right, and I think we've talked about this a little bit in the sense of, you know, we have to meet people where they are, we have to meet the politicians where they are, but there is a lot of FUD, there is a lot of negative perspectives on Bitcoin, and some of it, I think, and it's not super conspiratorial to think this way, that some of it is intentional. And so while you're engaging with people at this level, at what point do you say, okay, we have to protect the industry from some of what they're trying to do, you know, trying to attack the industry or stymie it? Have you guys thought about this and how to position yourselves in that perspective so that so it's not so much that, you know, you're giving them everything they want, but you're also ensuring that the core feature of Bitcoin is still intact. And just to give some context, right, we have politicians like in the US, we have Elizabeth Warren, she's a senator from Massachusetts, she's got her anti-crypto army, very anti-Bitcoin. We have other politicians who are trying to pass legislation to curtail the ability for Bitcoin mining to integrate into the energy system. In Europe, we've also had similar policies in the EU trying to put pressure on Bitcoin mining. We had a mandatory emergency survey that came out to get data from the industry. And so I think that we have to be mindful that some of this is strategic in attempt to stop Bitcoin. So how are you guys integrating that into your overall plan in terms of, you want to engage with them, you want to convince them, but also being mindful that there is this underlying tension that is there at these top levels?
I would like to start to answer this very long question.
No big deal.
And there is not only one answer to the question, I guess. So first of all, what I experience, and that is a very interesting angle to approach these politicians, what are their goals? What are their goals? And we can talk about this for hours now, but some of them include taxes, employment, and they want to get elected again. And when there's more and more Bitcoiners electing some of them, those politicians, or not electing those politicians, you just have to look at what happens at Vanguard. It's a market decision when someone says, hey, with me as a CEO, there's not going to be a spot ETF, and tomorrow, at the end of 24, I have to retire. See you, bye. So, and this happens maybe to politicians in the future as well. So that is my first thought. And secondly, that is very interesting, and again, using the same language when we're talking, especially in the EU, talking about ESG, the ESG narrative. And I'm not like saying or putting that into perspective who serves this ESG narrative, but if you look especially at the social aspects to Bitcoin, what Anita Posch is doing in Africa, but also when you look at employment again, Bitcoin creates employment. So many great people here on Madeira starting their own business, or businesses like your business that is existing for many years, that creates taxes. Bitcoin itself doesn't create taxes and income for states and politicians, but the employment create, and then those people, they have a job, and so on and so on. So when you use this angle, this is very interesting for politicians without all the FAT that has been created like 2015 or 2017, and you still have to fight this. So this, I guess, is very important, even though we all know that it has its upside and downside, the whole ESG debate.
So I guess my take on this is, important conversations, we need to have them, we need to try to influence. For us, like you're asking, at what point does it become too much? We're trying to obviously safeguard our interests. We're trying to engage in these conversations. We realize there's such a long way to go. We realize we're still, the doors are still so very closed on the public level, on the policy level, and so on. That's just it's a grind. It's an ongoing fight that you need to engage in, and we need to be present in those conversations. We have needed to react when something is coming to a point where people are talking about like abolishing our industry or whatever. Then we need to go meet with some ministers and so on that understand that we create value, and so it always gets backtracked. But on the other side of this, and just on the business side of this, the private venture always leads. That's fact. So there are a lot of private entities around Europe producing power. Sure, I mean, obviously we're all slaves to the policy in terms of whether we get banned or not, but we try to do everything that we can do that we don't need to seek permission for, right? Because we just operate within the current laws and policies that are in place, and we can do that. Let's not talk about this as if it's a banned industry or whatever. We are, and just as you rightly mentioned, we pay a lot of taxes. We provide a lot of value in Iceland. We employ people. We've essentially created a whole industry that has been a huge net benefit for the Icelandic nation. And the biggest proof of that is in the fact that the Landsvirkjun, the state-owned power production company, has never in its almost 60-year history been more profitable than last year, and they haven't built a new power plant in a long, long time. So what does that mean? It means someone is buying a product that was previously unsellable, this curtailable power, and it's us. And they're kind of trying to push us out now. So next year will not be as profitable for them.
So we're starting to run out of time, so I want to add another component to this question. Let's make it a little bit harder. And so what I want to add to this... Sorry, guys, this is a test. Except for you, Susie. There's no test questions here. You'll be fine. But, okay, so I did set up the politicians here a little bit, some of them as bad guys. But, the industry itself, there are challenges. So do you think that some of the reactions to politicians in terms of seeing them as a threat or as an attack on the industry, do you think it's entirely fair, or do you think that there are some things within the mining industry that are a little overblown in terms of the reaction? Like, are the mining companies being too aggressive in their refusal to engage maybe in these types of surveys and holding back data? And I really want to throw this to Harald, because we talked about this a little bit, and I want to put him on the spot a little bit and hear from him if possible, and in terms of some of these challenges with working with the industry. So, Harald, if you understand what I'm saying, it would be great.
10 seconds.
It's great. I have 14 seconds left.
Yeah, I guess I took all the time asking the question.
But I'll keep it super short. I hope so, at least. I think in every conversation, irrespective of whether it's between human beings, two groups, or different stakeholder groups, there are always hidden motives. And we will never discover them, and nobody will share those hidden motives. And that's all right. The important thing is that we're conscious about them and that we know about them. So I'm not going into the detail what this might be with regards to the energy and the ESG FUD, but you can have an idea about it. And I think on the other hand, on the side of the Bitcoiners, there are also some black sheep there. We need to be very aware of the fact that there are short-term thinkers, arbitrageurs that have no long-term interest in mind. But what makes me hopeful about the development, the net development over time, is that because of the difficulty adjustment, because of the halving, there is always an inefficiency washout that makes sure that those actors get washed out. And I think we have heard about that as well. And I think we need to be aware of both and focus on the story that we actually want to tell and be consistent in it, but also not be naive and ignore that we also have to do our own homework. And partially, the Bitcoin network takes care of that by itself. So I think we should also be patient. This is really a marathon run. We need to work together. We need to support each other. We need to share as much as we can. We cannot ignore that we cannot run this run alone, but we need us in a relay where we need all the diverse view, the diverse experience, and pull them together and concentrate them in one message and stick to this message until the people that want to hear this message can recognize this recognize us for what we want to say.
Can I shoot something on the back of that?
Sorry?
Can I shoot something, just one thing to answer directly your question? Are we being too harsh by refusing to answer, for example, the survey that came out recently? I think absolutely not. I think the thing about us miners and people in the industry is we realize the value that we bring. We know that we are doing good, and we refuse to be discriminated against by misinformed and misguided politicians.
Excellent. All right. All right, well, thank you, everyone. So I just want to remind you, these are all humans. They're very, very friendly people, and they're just walking around the halls just like you. So if you have any questions, if you want to get involved with what they're doing with their organizations, reaching out to your local politicians, leaders, etc., please go and talk to Susie, Daniel, Harald, Chris, because they want to talk with you. So the more people who get involved, the better these groups will be, the stronger we will be, plebs strong together, and we can really make Bitcoin a really powerful tool that everyone can make use of. So thank you all for coming. We are definitely out of time, and I'm Margot, as I said. So I hope to see you out here in the halls, and feel free to talk to me too if you really want to. And enjoy the rest of the conference. It's been a real pleasure spending these 50+ minutes with you today.